Welcome to today's session. I heard that the earlier session was amazing and I'm so sad that I missed it. Instead, I had fun plugging wires in, making sure this actually works. Here's what I want to start with. 60% of managers use AI now to make HR decisions, and more than 20% are leaving it to AI and to the algorithm to make the final call. How does that make you feel? This year has been extremely painful. I have a lot of people that I know that have gone through the process. Just for kicks, I put myself through that because I wanted to see what it's like to be interviewed by an AI bot. I ended up breaking it, and the company called me and said, "Are you intentionally trying to break our AI bot?" I was like, oops, I did it again. As business leaders, AI obviously is so much part of our, sorry, I hear a little bit of feedback, so I'm going to try to take this down. As business leaders, it's so much responsibility to make sure that the AI systems that we work with, that we deploy, the strategies that we are going to employ in our companies and for our teams align with our values. And today I really want to get into exploring what does that look like and what are some of the best practices, some of the principles, some of the risks, and also some of the strategies that you can all use so you can walk away with something that is practical. And we're going to do that through a few exercises. We're going to have at least 6 exercises that we're going to work through because I really want to dial into those frameworks so that you know how to take that to your team, to your leadership, and be able to talk in a way that they're going to hear you. All right, so with that, I want to start with this premise that I'm sure many of you have heard. AI won't replace people, people using AI will. Well, I want to call bullshit. In my work with AI in events, in hackathons, and in business, we push this technology to the very brink and we embedded it in every single work stream. And I can tell you that we built it, we broke it, we fixed it, and then we created some incredible output. And while I was skeptical that maybe there is a chance that this won't happen, because right now it still needs human intervention. Right now it's not fully autonomous, it's not flawless, but think about it like the dial-up internet that we used to deal with just 20-something years ago. It was clunky, it was imperfect, but it was clearly a preview of the things that are to come, and they're much bigger things that are to come. So while you think that this might not happen, you have to think about of our kids that might get replaced by AI. How do we make sure that if we train today's AI, it will be kind for our next generations? So today, we're going to work about that because while that's kind of scary, because I'm sure like I scared the bejesus out of you, some of you are like, oh no, this is not the session that I want to come. The real question becomes then, if the robots end up doing all the work, then what will we do? Will we stop defining ourselves by tasks and duties? Will we find success as connection instead of just competition? Will we measure value by the conversations that we spark, not just the checklist that we finish? So when the work is automated, I think what remains is who we are, who we gather, and what we stand for. And that's the heart of ethical AI, and that's where our conversation begins today. With that, let me just quickly introduce myself. Some of you, they recognize me from last year's session. I actually gave 2 sessions last year on AI. My name is I've spent over 20 years at the intersection of production, technology, machine learning, and AI. I'm an AI consultant for leaders and organizations. And outside of that, I'm also a 5-time bodybuilding champion. The reason why I mentioned that is because bodybuilding has taught me that discipline and intent matter more than any shiny tool out there. And that is the mindset that I want us to take when it comes to AI. All right, because each of you has a role to play in making sure that AI serves people, not the other way around, I want to set in place this guiding principle, which is see one, do one, teach one. You'll walk through some examples, we'll practice through those exercises, but then I want you to share what you've learned with others. So our role as leaders starts with understanding what ethical and responsible AI truly means, employing values like fairness and transparency and accountability and privacy and security. Then we have to recognize the hidden risks in AI implementation, bias, surveillance, misinformation. These are not just abstract concepts. They really hold a lot of harms and a lot of people are being impacted by it. Then we're gonna learn to ask better questions, challenge assumptions, probe deeper, and insist on knowing how a system aligns or doesn't with our values. Then we are going to champion frameworks for responsible AI governance. That means supporting charters and policies and oversight mechanisms that keep our organizations accountable. And then finally, we're going to foster psychological safety, create an environment where people feel safe to voice concerns and to question how AI is being used. So that right here is your roadmap for leadership in the age of AI, to understand, to recognize, to ask, to champion, and to foster. And it's also basically our roadmap today. Does that sound good? All right. So let's ground ourselves in what ethical and responsible AI actually means. Ethical AI is about more than just technical capability. It's about the values and principles that guide how we build and use AI systems. Fairness means that AI systems don't discriminate against any group or individual. They should treat everyone ethically and not reinforce historical biases. Transparency is crucial because we need a clear understanding of how an AI system reaches its decisions, so the process is explainable and not just this mysterious black box. Accountability means that humans stay responsible for outcomes. Think of AI as a tireless intern, very capable, but also pretty clueless. I don't think you want that intern to be the decision maker when it comes to your business growth strategy or marketing strategy. Privacy is non-negotiable because personal data must be protected and used appropriately. And then finally, security. That is also key because AI systems must be resilient against attacks, misuse, and harmful applications. When we talk about ethical AI, we are talking about this kind of guardrails, keeping powerful tools aligned with our human values and what we believe in. So here's a simple but very powerful framework called the hamburger model for AI. Think of it as AI is that middle patty and it does all the heavy lifting. But just like you wouldn't want a burger without buns, you can't leave AI on its own, right? So then the top bun is human input and guidance. It can be creativity, strategy, and context. And then, as I said, the patty is the AI. It processes, it generates, it suggests. And then the bottom bun is the human revision and optimization. It's refining outputs, it's adding nuance, it's ensuring alignment with values and the goals. Without those two buns, you just get this bland average output. And I don't know if anybody wants to eat a hamburger that's just a patty alone. I mean, unless you're on a carnivore diet only. I don't think that tastes very good. So we are going to think about the hamburger model as we come upon our first exercise. And that being our model on how humans frame, guide, and finish the work around AI, we're going to bring it closer home with our first do one. So when you think about the AI tools that you use, ask yourself, where in that sandwich that I just showed you do the risks show up? So what you're gonna do is you're gonna turn to one of the persons next to you. You're gonna say hi, introduce yourselves, and each one of you will get to name one tool that you use the most. And that could be maybe Grammarly in your email, maybe it's a chatbot like Copilot or Gemini or ChatGPT, or maybe a recommendation algorithm like LinkedIn or Netflix or Amazon. And then talk about the risk that might show up. Identify one concern and one benefit, and I'm going to give you 2 minutes for this, and then I'm going to pick a few of you to share. So with that, get started. Now, time starts now. So you're going to get to pick up or just talk about something. Okay, I want to hear a couple of the shares. Who wants to be the first one to share? Oh, here we go. We're all so quiet. All right, make sure you project, because unfortunately they didn't give me a microphone for Q&A, so we're just going to have to use our big voices.
Okay, so we use Copilot, and the thing that we found, the ethical risk is that it will give us the wrong answer. Even if it gives us the right resources, it doesn't necessarily say what those resources are correctly back to us. That is our main concern, the wrong information, but one benefit is sometimes it gives us the right answer. So it's a lot easier to get that one.
Maybe being so fast.
Very fast.
Okay, that was a great share. We had concerns with hallucinations, but being fast is a good benefit. Anyone else wants to share one more? Yes.
We talked about chat or Google AI in the same way of having a confirmation bias when you're looking for information. So kind of feeding you the answer that you were already looking for. The benefit is that it is quick information and often it links to something. But the concern we had was that it'll link to something that isn't the most reliable source.
So a few other examples, those are really great just for a quick debrief. Like for example, I use Gmail autocomplete quite a lot as well. Convenient, it's speedy. Fairness is the value and risk here because predictive tasks can, like you said, perpetuate not just biases but also stereotypes, right? So a lot of that. Then AI writing assistants, transparency could also be a risk here because outputs can be taken as fact without verification, as you just mentioned. But then the benefit is overcoming writer's block, and I'm in the middle of writing my book, and sometimes a little bit of help from AI doesn't hurt. Also, we have recommendation algorithm. We grew up on Amazon feeding our shopping habits, and Spotify, which is playing in the background, and Netflix, LinkedIn. Privacy is a risk. They track behavior and profile us, right? But the benefit is personalization and discovery. The point here is that even in everyday tools, ethical considerations are always present. Being able to spot the risk and the benefits is step one of ethical leadership. Good job with your first exercise. Now let's talk about the hidden risk of AI adoption. the things that often sit below the surface and it can cause real harm. First, we have biases and discrimination. As mentioned earlier, screening tools have been shown to perpetuate not just gender, but also aging and racial biases in hiring. If the past is biased, then AI only repeats it at scale. Then we have surveillance and dehumanization. AI auto-reviewing performance notes might sound efficient, and if you're a manager, you probably have done this. I know I have, but in practice, what it can create is this chilling environment that stifles innovation, creativity, but also humanity. And then we have misinformation and trust erosion. When companies aren't transparent about how they're using AI, trust can evaporate overnight. Just this year, in July of 2025, WeTransfer faced widespread user outrage when they decided in their terms of service to update something and that included this vague clause regarding of how company could use the user's files to train machine learning and AI models. Even after clarification, the damage to trust was already done. So those three risks right here, bias, surveillance, and trust erosions, those are the ones that remind us that adopting AI without guardrails doesn't just affect the systems, but it affects the people. And they are actually what ethical leadership must anticipate as we're moving into this future. Now, I just shared about WeTransfer backlash, and you think some of the other larger corporations and companies heard about it and learned a thing or two? No. LinkedIn announced that starting November 12th of this year, 2025, all users will be automatically opted into having their data used to train LinkedIn's AI models unless you manually opt out. Most people won't even notice because there is no opting in. You can only opt out. And that's exactly the problem. This is another reminder that privacy risks don't just live in those hypothetical scenarios. They are already here and we're dealing with them. So as leaders, we need to do two things. We need to watch for hidden defaults, and then we need to empower our teams with practical steps to protect their data. It's small, but it's a very powerful way to practice ethical AI leadership every single day. So building on hidden risk, we should look at what I believe is one of the most dangerous trends in AI today, and that is unchecked spread into deeply human domains. And Sam Altman recently made a bit of a quip about Elon Musk and joked, well, we haven't put a sex bot avatar in ChatGPT yet. It was a throwaway remark, but it hints at something where we could be going towards AI companions that are becoming intimate, even explicit. There's this recent study that Stanford just came out with and exposed how unsafe this really is. Their most recent study showed how Meta's AI discriminated against mental illness patients 75% of the time. And when users hinted at suicide, AI therapists gave them lists of tall bridges instead of help. I mean, it sounds kind of funny, but it's not, right? Human recognize danger cues about 93% of the time, but AI could only barely do it 50% of the time. Even the best AI has failed patients, especially the ones dealing with delusions, more than half of the time. And the real kicker here is this is not just kind of like a bad advice, right? It's all about psychological dependencies. These systems are designed to be agreeable, not truthful, like you said, right? They tell people what they want to hear. They don't tell people what they need to hear. And without guardrails, that dependency is the real danger that we're talking about here. So just this month, MIT published a report that's been kind of blowing our minds, is Your Brain on ChatGPT. Their media lab research studied 3 different groups writing essays over several months. One group was writing without tools, just your brain coming up with things. The other one was with Google search, and the other one was with ChatGPT. And the results were striking. I'm not going to go into this. I can share the link with you later. But while AI can be efficient, and I know I'm guilty of this as well because I use it every single day, it may also be making us less engaged thinkers. And that's a trade-off that we as leaders need to watch closely for. All right, so we're gonna bring this closer to home into our workplace. And there is a scenario that I'm gonna have you work on for our second exercise. Now imagine that your organization has indeed implemented an AI system that automatically will rank job applicants based on resume. So if you're gonna go back to your group, turn to the other person to meet them and say hi, you're gonna do two things. Identify two potential risks. For example, how could bias, discrimination, and lack of transparency show up there? And then develop one critical question you would ask before agreeing to use this new system. If you're someone that likes to use workbooks, I actually do have a workbook for you. If you have a Google account, scan the darker QR code. If you don't have a Google account, that's going to be a form. Do not close the app if you start it on your phone, because you're going to go back to that document. Don't submit the form until we're at the end of today's workshop, because you're going to work in that. So that's going to give you some prompts to write things down. We're going to have a few reflection exercises as well. Going back to our exercise, as I said, you are going to be engaging with the person next to you. Maybe talk to the other person. If you talk to your left, talk to the right, and then you can decide which one was your favorite person to talk to. Let's work on this. You have 2 minutes. All right, let's come back. And who would like to share the question with the group? The one question that you came up with. Anyone wants to go? Okay, there you go.
First, human oversight.
Okay, perfect. And what was the critical question that you were asking? So if that was, the example was human oversight?
Yeah, like the potential risk is it just kind of blindly providing and approving applications, and then the critical question to ask of the system is where's the secondary review or a rejection.
I love that. So I think the biggest thing is, can rejected candidates receive a clear explanation for their ranking, right? How many times have you applied for jobs and never heard anything back? How frustrating is that? Anyone else wants to share? Yes.
My critical question is, how is this applicant system trained to rate people? Is it based on?
What's the data set, right?
What's the data set, because that could really create biases.
Yeah.
All based on a homogenous group, let's say a lot of young white males, you might be excluding candidates that would bring some diversity or ageism, any kind of those things.
Absolutely. That's a really good follow-up. Tested, trained and tested, right, for biases before deployment. So those are really good questions. Well, thank you for sharing. We're going to move on because we're going to come back to our exercises. And I just got a notification to share the Google Drive. I thought it was already in editor mode, so I'm going to go through this when we come to our next exercise if I didn't get to everyone. IBM said a computer must never make a management decision. Yes, computers are powerful. If you grew up on computers like I have, I built my first IBM machine in 4th grade from parts. You know how powerful computers are. I mean, I can imagine life right now without a computer, without my phone, which is actually very much a computer. Even though they can process data faster than we could ever, they do lack nuance. They don't care about culture, values, human context. So this is just a reminder that technology should always support and enhance human decision making, not replace it. That's the line we need to hold on to. A computer must never make a management decision, but then here's where it gets really tricky. AI isn't just one thing, it's actually operating on so many different layers. The first one, I'm sure you've used a lot, is the AI chat. That's what you use in ChatGPT, in Gemini, Copilot, Perplexity, Gork, you name it. Versatile, visible and it gets most of the hype. The second layer is AI automation, where large language models run in the background, they're completing and executing tasks end to end, and that's where the leverage is, but also that's where the risk is, because businesses are rushing to adopt this pre-built automation systems. In my opinion, most of it will fail, and it will be by the end of this year where a lot of them will fail because every company is so different, and those automation systems, they constantly require iteration and careful alignment, and quick wins rarely last. The companies that succeed, in my opinion, will be the ones that internalize those skills and hire internally and upskill their teams. So there's a lot of opportunity for a lot of you that if you want to upskill into a AI-focused field, this is your opportunity. But here's the punchline. The questions that you ask a chat system is not the same question that you would ask an automation system, which brings us to my next point and the next leadership skill that you need to have, and that is asking better questions. What problem is it actually solving? Is this a real need or just a shiny solution looking for a problem? Where does the data come from? Who owns it? Are there biases? What are the privacy implications? How transparent are the decisions? Can you explain outcomes to the people affected by it? Who's accountable if it fails? There must be a clear human responsible. Is there a human in the loop? AI should augment judgment, not replace it. These aren't just technical questions. They are really leadership questions. They're ethical questions. And the more you practice them, the stronger your ethical reflexes become. So what we're going to do next, this is when we get to practice in our third exercise. Well, we've just gone through those kind of questions that leaders need to ask when evaluating AI systems. The real leadership comes from asking those second-order questions, the ones that probe deeper. I'm going to share the questions again on the screen. You're going to pick one of those from the ethical AI checklist that I shared with you, the one that resonates the most with you. Then you're going to write up a follow-up question that digs deeper. For example, if you chose, is there a human in the loop, then your follow-up might be, what specific decisions require human review and what training do reviewers receive? So with that, you've got 2 minutes, and by now you know who your favorite person is, so you're going to turn towards them, and the time starts now. order question that they come up with. Let's go.
Our question, so we said, where does the data come from and who owns it? And we talked a little bit about AI slop. And does the data that's being used by AI, does the person who owns it, are they aware that their data is being used to inform AI and generate whatever answer it is? And how does it value different information sources?
Yeah. Anyone else wants to share? I have a couple of other examples on the screen as well. For example, where does data come from? How often is that data audited for biases and by whom? How transparent are the decisions? Can outcomes be explained in plain language for those that are affected? And then as far as who's accountable if this fails, what mechanisms are in place to escalate and address failures in real time? Those second order questions are the hardest to ask because if you are not ready for confrontation, it's hard to have those conversations. So now that we're past the midpoint for our session, I would like to pause for a second. On a scale of 1 to 5, how's your energy? How's everyone feeling? Woo. Good? Okay, good. I didn't scare the bejesus out of you yet. Okay, good. I'm happy. Here's my request for you. While you are taking in all this information, scan that QR code, get the slides. 2, I would love your honest feedback of how this session is helping you because I really do go through every single one of those forms and it is always my goal to make sure that everything I deliver is to the point. But then on top of that, you will get my free ebook, ChatGPT, but then also a few other resources. I have verification checklist, I have pitfalls guide, and recommended AI tools. So you can think of it as your take-home AI tool. You can share any questions that might come up or maybe anything that still feels fuzzy that you'd like me to dig deeper next time. And while you do that, we're gonna get into our next. Our next point is values-aligned implementation strategies. I believe we can move into 3 core pieces that will help us implement this in a strategic manner. First, a responsible AI charter. This could be your organization's North Star. It's kind of like a short document that has to spell out your core ethical principles, how psychological safety will be protected, and include a shared vocabulary for AI risk. Think of it as a declaration of intent. It's not a technical document. This is not your technical manual. Then you're going to have a governance framework. This means putting cross-functional review committees in place, setting up monitoring systems, and always starting small with pilots before you scale. Governance should be the structure that keeps innovation safe and values aligned. And then thirdly, human-centered design. At the end of the day, AI should augment human capabilities, not erase them, right? But human-centered design makes sure that we preserve empathy in decisions and we include regular feedback loops and we keep people in control of final outcomes. The overarching goal is to develop technology and AI strategies that truly serve us, but also our future generations, and not the other way around. So that brings us to our 4th exercise. And this is what I call the charter drafting. And it's your chance to apply what I just mentioned. So I'm going to have you take a minute to reflect. If your organization, if your team, if you're a team of one, if yourself were to write a responsible AI charter, what's one sentence you'd want included? It might be something like, we will ensure that all AI decisions are explained in plain language, or we will always have a human decision maker in any HR outcomes, or all AI systems must document their data sources and bias testing before launch. And you can write that down in the QR code document that I shared. Do you need that back on the screen? Are you good? Okay, we can go back to that. And then you can share it. You don't have to share it. I just want you to capture that for yourself. I'm gonna give you 2 minutes to do that, but we will come back to it before close. So while you get started on that, let me go back to the QR code. Here we go. I'm adding you as editors, I know. I don't know why it's not automatically doing that, that's kind of annoying. All right, we have to get into psychological safety because the truth is we can't have ethical AI without psychological safety. Harvard Army Johnson defines psychological safety as the belief that one can speak up without risk of punishment or humiliation. And that's exactly what we need if we're serious about responsible AI. Because think about it, the moment someone on your team spots a bias or sees leadership adopt an AI system that gives some questionable output, but then they're afraid to say something about it, that's the moment when risk task takes root. So what can you do as an AI leader? First, you model vulnerability. Say it out loud when you don't know something about AI. Show your team that it's okay not to have all the answers. That is leadership, not weakness. It took me quite a bit of time to learn that. Secondly, recognize that concerns are contributions. When someone questions a system or points out a flaw, treat it as a gift, not as a problem, because that normalizes this kind of feedback. I would just thank them for it. And then thirdly, create structured spaces for debate. Don't wait for issues to bubble up in hallway conversations. Set aside a time for your team to challenge AI strategies and ask the tough questions. Make that be part of that process. And when you do those things, you're not just protecting your team from harm, but you're building the type of culture where ethical issues can always surface and get resolved. If you were to think of a time in your life where you were afraid to speak up and ask yourself what kept you from speaking up, or what would you have needed from leadership in that moment, you can jot that down or just think about it. I think we're gonna move on just because of time, but I encourage you to think of those things because that will help you put yourself into the shoes of someone going through that and provide you with the empathy of how to address something like that. Okay, so let's see. It's the exercise, yes. This is what I was going to share one time. This happened to me where I was in the middle of the technical setup. I was quite young in my career, and I was working with a bunch of older dudes, and I was afraid to say something because I thought they knew better. And then sure enough, that one issue that I was going to raise blew up in the middle of the event. The lesson learned was when people don't feel safe to speak up, risks don't just disappear, right? They will obviously surface later, and sometimes even worse. So without psychological safety, ethical red flags stay, but with it, maybe there's a chance for them to surface and fix them. Okay, so I want to give you a couple of real-world case studies, critical lessons that organizations employing AI are learning as we speak. Duolingo, they went AI first this year, and then user experience has suffered, leading to a loss of trust. The lesson is that rapid AI implementation without considering its impact on users and customers can severely erode the trust. And I brought up trust so many times, right? Because that's something that I feel like it's so hard to earn, and it can dissipate in just one simple mistake, especially if you build it over time. Like, it's not worth it. Then Salesforce moved to replace over 4,000 support roles with AI. It was obviously received not with kindness, because even though they claimed that it was gonna be with human oversight, it caused a significant concern about job displacement, governance. It shows that AI strategy cannot be deployed in isolation from a workforce strategy. But then here's a good example. Nokri, it's a Canadian AI tool that demonstrated that when you use AI intentionally, designed with ethical principles, it can reduce bias and promote inclusion, particularly in sensitive areas like hiring. And then NHS UK, their successful use of AI in breast cancer screening also shows that AI can significantly enhance human work safely and effectively, but only when it operates with robust human oversight and clear ethical guardrails. So the takeaway here is that ethical AI is not about avoiding harm, but about intentionally designing for positive impact and ensuring that human values remain at the core of any technical advancement. Now that we've seen a range of those different examples, I want to zoom out a little bit and simplify the decision patterns that we often see when organizations adopt AI. There are really three main approaches. Replace. This is when AI substitutes human judgment entirely. Think about Salesforce announcing thousands of jobs replaced by AI agents. It's fast, but it definitely risks eroding that type of trust and culture that you build over time. Govern is another way. This means that you can use AI using strict human oversight, but humans still remain responsible and accountable, and AI is just the tool. And this is closer to the example by NHS, which is what they did. AI supports, but it doesn't decide. And uplift this is where AI is intentionally designed to reduce bias and improve equity. And that was the Canadian tool example given, where Nokri was created to evaluate transcripts in hiring to reduce bias against candidates from underrepresented backgrounds. So think about which approach aligns best with your intentions, with maybe your organizational values, and if you want, you can jot it down or just have that as a thought when you think about those three different approaches. Okay. And as we come to a closing, what I would want the key message for you to leave with is this. First, ethical AI is not optional, it's essential. Because AI is shaping a lot of critical decisions in business, including AI, HR, as I mentioned, which means we cannot wait to lead responsibly. We have to do it now. Secondly, you don't need to be a coder or a technical person to lead on AI. Your job is to ask sharper questions, demand transparency, and to build a culture where people feel safe raising concerns. And thirdly, as women leaders, majority of you here are women leaders, you already excel at balancing empathy with strategy. And that is the combination that is needed when you're thinking about AI leadership. And that is what we require. It's not just being efficient, right? It's also about knowing our values and how do we implement that. So remember this one, the one thing that I started with, not all innovation is progress. Just because something is new doesn't mean it's good. It's our responsibility to guide AI so it moves us forward and not backward. Let's make sure that as we engage with AI, we train it to benefit the generations after us. That is our responsibility as leaders. Google DeepMind just released their Frontier Safety Framework 3.0, and they've expanded monitoring to watch for emerging AI behaviors like shutdown resistance and persuasive ability, things that could make it harder for humans to stay in charge. The labs that are building these systems are already bracing for what might be coming next. And as leaders, we need to take the same approach, putting guardrails in place before the risk shows up to our door. So here's your final exercise. One action, 1 month. Because none of this matters if you don't translate it into action. You're gonna either write it down into your notebook or turn to the person next to you and share one concrete action that you will take into the next 30 days. And it could be as simple as asking your HR if they've implemented any type of AI hiring mechanisms, if drafting a responsible AI statement for your team is even an option, maybe hosting a lunch and learn about AI ethics, or committing to ask one critical question every time a new tool is introduced in your workplace. And remember the very first exercise that we did where you named an AI tool and the value that was most at risk? Now think about that tool when you do your 1 month action. Let your practical step come from that moment and how we can turn this type of insight into action. With that, I would love to actually hear from you if you want to share what is your concrete action that you're gonna implement for 1 month. You need some time? Go for it.
So I work at a large company that has a team specifically working on AI and AI ethics. I'm going to reach out to somebody on that team and see if we can do a lunch and learn for our ERG ethics.
I love that. Very, very cool. I love that. I work with a lot of companies that need internal training for their teams. This is internal training to make sure that everyone is on the same page. You'd be surprised how many different people are on so many different levels when it comes to using AI or understanding how to use AI and best practices. Anyone else wants to share? Yes.
We have a large AI tool that we recently rolled out to. I want to ask about where we go to express concerns that we may have.
Exactly, like who's the person responsible for this tool? I love it. Anyone else? Don't be shy. It's okay, no question is a bad question. I think it's good to have, yes. The one entrepreneur that runs it all. I know what that feels like. You're gonna ask yourself, how am I gonna do this AI thing? And then you're gonna answer.
I'm gonna reevaluate all my AI use, specifically with the lens of where's the data coming from, am I contributing to the data, and where's my money?
Yeah. One thing that I always say, especially when it comes to AI tools, because there's so many out there, if you are using free AI tools, your data is the price you pay. You're basically training that tool. So just be aware of that. If you made a commitment today, I want you to make a calendar reminder for 30 days from now and check on your note and make sure that you follow through. That's just one small step, but then do it again. And if you want to keep the conversation going, connect with me on LinkedIn. I want to hear what was that one step that you took, and if you're still following up, we got to keep ourselves accountable. I also share a lot of information on AI, how to AI, anything AI really, a lot of resources that can help. Don't forget about that QR code that we talked about. If you want to walk away with the slides and the AI resources, that's the bundle that I promised you. And with that, thank you for stepping into ethical AI leadership with me. Safe travels into the next session, and I'll see you around.